Well, the rules-based international order is a bipartisan agenda that's been in place since the end of World War II. Republicans and Democrats alike have furthered it. Donald Trump, again, in his campaign, called out the rules-based international order and said that requires America to interface with the world in a way that is inherently confrontational, that the greatest threat to America in the world today is America, the rules-based international order. The rules-based international order requires the United States to seek to shape the world as the United States needs the world to be so that we can best exploit the world. And that was the mission of USAID. To go in, it's to use soft power, so you gain access on the subterfuge of trying to help people. And then you get in there and through various programs, you seek to change societies, to change regimes, to shape the world the way you want it. The USAID has been doing this forever. In the 1980s, the USAID got a new outlet, the National Endowment for Democracy, that had a lot of regime change built into it. But remember, USAID was created in 1961. Do you know the name John Paul Vaughan? Are you familiar with him? Neil Sheehan wrote a book called A Bright Shining Lie. It's a story of John Paul Vaughan, an Army officer who then got involved in Vietnam, called out all the problems of Vietnam, but then went back as the USAID chief. And anybody who says, well, USAID is about foreign aid and helping, he was a civilian commander of American military forces in the war. He was the head of something called CORDS, which brought together USAID, U.S. Information, Department of Defense, Department of State, the CIA. His program, CORDS, ran the Phoenix assassination programs. That's a USAID program. That's 1970, 1971, 72. So a decade after being created, USAID is in the warfighting business, the regime sustainment business, covert operations, assassinations. It's been doing this in Africa. It's been doing this in Latin America, South America. Everywhere USAID is, these are the programs that they run. They have different cutouts. And the other thing that happens is that USAID, when they created the National Endowment for Democracy and these other congressionally mandated programs, you've now not just politicized the activities, but you've done it in a bipartisan fashion. For instance, National Endowment for Democracy has 4 operating arms. One of them is a Republican institute, one's a Democratic institute, one is a labor institute. I can't remember what the fourth one is, but they all are political constituencies. And what happens is that they each get these lobbyists now who start to lobby for different policies. So Washington, D.C. is full of offices of these lobbyists who work with Congress. People should go look up the Helsinki Commission. It's a congressional body that gets together and plans regime change operations, and under the guise of spreading democracy. But these people have meetings where they plot things, then they establish programs, they define the funding for the programs, and the money, Congress allocates the money to USAID, who then farms it out and sends it off there. And it's not just American groups. We work with the German Marshall Fund. It's more American than German, I'll tell you that. The European Endowment for Democracy. There ain't nothing European about that. It's run, America directs that. The Norwegian Refugee Council. Now, there's a big one. The NRC. Those boys have been around there helping the world. They're everywhere. And they're Norwegians, so they can be trusted. But the Norwegian Refugee Council has an arm called the Norwegian Refugee Council USA. And it lives in Washington, D.C., and it meets with Congress to get the money. The NRC, Norwegian Refugee Council, was given $154 million in miscellaneous discretionary cash. What do you use $154 million for in miscellaneous discretionary cash? I think you put it in duffel bags and you throw it into the cars of corrupt Ukrainian officials. That's how you buy off things. This is as corrupt as it gets. $154 million in discretionary cash. That's not even the money that, if you take a look at the pay that these NRC people get, They're extraordinarily well paid. And the people that are running their offices, they get big fat paychecks. So a lot of money gets put out there. And then as it works its way down the system, it's just going into different people's pockets, making everybody happy. You know how you do corruption in Washington, D.C.? One of the main ways. Let's say you're a senator and you come up, Scott, I'd like your support. I'm going to write you a nice check, Senator Al-Rashid. I'm going to give you a nice big old check. Well, I don't need anything, man. You do the right thing there, Senator. You're a good man. I know you're a good man. And then you become senator, and then you call it Scott. Yep. Scott, you're a great American. Well, thank you, Mr. Senator. Scott, I think you'd be perfect to head up the Save the Rwandan Whales. There are no whales in Rwanda, but we're going to save the Rwandan Whales program because it's a program that just a great American like you can do. Well, gosh, Senator, thank you for thinking of me when you're thinking of the Rwandan Whales. It's always been a program near and dear to my heart. Yep. So we're going to give that to you, and you can build up a staff and all that. We expect good things from you. And I come in, and I sit down at my desk, and I get a nice big check, a couple $100,000, maybe a couple million, and then I hire all my little cronies who get lots of money too. And if there ever was a Rwandan whale, it's not going to get anything except maybe a visit by someone who goes, look, photo opportunity, Rwandan whale saving. That's it. That's how USAID works. I know Samantha Power can sit there and cry about, peanut butter paste and it's not getting in the mouths of the little South Sudanese refugees. Yes. But you know what, Samantha? That's the most expensive frickin' paste in the world. If you really wanted to get paste into the hands of them, you'd mass produce that by the billions. You cut out all the middleman and you just parachute it in. But nope, you go through the whole USAID thing because it's not about paste. And she knows that. It's about creating a front that allows you to infiltrate people in on the ground who are doing regime change, regime sustainment, intelligence collection. USAID is a CIA front. That's just the way it is. That's the reality of the world. And I've been calling it out from the get-go, and it's personal for me because USAID is responsible for destroying my wife's country, or trying to destroy my wife's country of Georgia, undermining it, trying to make it something that isn't. And fortunately, the Georgian government has been able to prevent that from happening. But USAID is a horrible organization, and I'm thrilled to death that they're going away. Thrilled to death. And now what you're going to find is that same pattern exists in every single major government department out there. Department of Education. Why do you think everybody's scared to death of the Department of Education getting looked at? Because it is the most corrupt place on the planet. It's not about educating the American people. It's about making money for people, setting up sinecures, helping unions, the teachers union do things that have nothing to do with education, but everything to do about political empowerment. The last thing on the Department of Education's mind is, can little Bobby and Julie, do their math and do their English? First of all, it's not a federal problem. Ask yourself again. I mean, the last time I looked, it's the town of Bethlehem has a school board that makes decisions about the town of Bethlehem school. The state can come in and get involved in that. But why the hell is the federal government getting involved in a local education issue? And how much money does it cost to have a federal government person who will never get any money? I mean, this is corruption on a scale that you haven't imagined. And it's going to be disconcerting to people who thought that the Department of Education was about education. It's not about education. None of these departments are about what they say they're about. They're all about making money for people. It's the biggest money laundering scheme out there, and Donald Trump's finally bringing it to bear. And we need to. Why do you think we're $36 trillion in debt? Because this is waste and fraud. I mean, you can't run a country this way. It's not sustainable. And this is what, I love it. There's no such thing as the deep state. I just defined to you the deep state. I just told you what the deep state is. It's this permanent bureaucracy that has hijacked America. We talked about the parasite-host relationship. This permanent bureaucracy is a parasitic element attached to the American people, sucking the life out of us. And we're not even aware of it. We're not even allowed to ask the question. My God, the second you say deep state, you're a conspiracy theorist. No, It's real. It's there. It's being exposed. And the powers that be, especially the Democrats, are scared to death of what's happening. Kicking and screaming and moaning and this. Donald Trump promised a revolution. We got one, baby. And I've never been happier in my entire life. I understand there's people losing their jobs. I understand that it's a problem. But if you were in a job that wasn't a job, if you were just a placeholder to sustain a system that wasn't accomplishing anything, moving papers from one desk to another that never solved an issue. I mean, the LA mayor. Well, we'll eventually allow you to your home sites to clean it, but it's going to take a week of us moving paper from one desk to another. No, it could happen right now, Mayor. Just come in and go home. Why do I have to pay people to shuffle papers around? This is what's happened in America today. We've become way over-regulated, way over-controlled by a bureaucracy that doesn't care about the people at all. It only cares about sustaining the bureaucracy and empowering Congress, the power of the purse. I think Congress is scared to death that the American people figure out how things really work. To give you an example, how many people in Congress actually read funding bills? None. Just the bigwigs. The bigwigs are aware of the things, but all the bigwigs do are they told, okay, this is the USAID sustainment package. You remember we went over that 15 years ago, Senator, when you first came in. Sustainment package, you don't need to look at it now. We've thrown a couple little things here. We took care of your people, though. You know, your guys down there, you're good. We gave you 15 more slots. Remember you asked us for 15 more slots so you could get some of your people that are donors in there? We took care of that. Nobody reads it. It's just there. And what happens in that is that the people that run USAID, they're not accountable to anybody. So when the odd representative says, I'm concerned, I want to go and look at it, and they go, hey, we want to come out and visit. We don't want you to come out and visit, but we're coming out and visit. Okay, take them on a car, show them the park, show them this, get them the hell out of the country. We are not responsive to Congress. Even when you get a political appointee, a director comes in and says, hey, I want this and the other thing. The people go, no, we don't work for you. I'm the director. Yeah, you're a political appointee. Okay. USAID is about the sustainment package that was approved by Congress 15 years ago when we worked it over. And that's all that. I just have to wait you out. You're nothing. And so it's on its own. There's no oversight. It just is happening on its own. All departments, all agencies are that way. The CIA is the most dangerous one. These guys are out there doing regime change. They're murdering people. They're destroying the economies of the world. They're on full automatic. And they don't report to anybody. You know, Gina Haspel was the director of the CIA, old-time operative. And she came in, and at that time, Obama was like, hey, a little worried about this, what's going on in Russia. So she went down to the Russian Mission Center and said, let's work. And they went, pound sand, we're the Russian Mission Center. We've been doing Russia stuff since before you were born. And we're not responsive to you. We're not talking to you. We just do what we do. Well, I'd like to review your intelligence, how you handle. No, ma'am, you don't get anywhere near how we handle our agents and all this kind of stuff. That's it. The CIA is full of fiefdoms. Near East Division, full of a bunch of guys who grew up assassinating, Iraqis, overthrowing Arab regimes, blowing up places in Persia, the secret war in Afghanistan. These guys aren't responsive to anybody. Latin America is just an old boy network. Africa, they don't respond to anybody. The CIA is an agency 100% out of control, 100% from the operational perspective, and it needs to be eliminated. Straight up, you bring them all in and fire them. And some of these guys are so dangerous, you might have to put them in Guantanamo because that's how dangerous these people are. They're so off the reservation, it's not even funny. FBI. The FBI is full of power-hungry assholes who basically wake up in the morning and say, which American can I screw today? That's it. Who are we going to screw today? They came after me because they're unhappy with what I'm saying. Well, Pam Bondi just undid it. I don't know if you're aware of the Attorney General's letter that she wrote saying cease and desist on FARA prosecutions. If they have a problem with me, give me the frickin' letter like you're supposed to that says this is the problem and give you an opportunity to fix it. They never gave me the letter. They just came in and raided my house because it's not about me doing anything wrong. It's about them trying to intimidate me. That's what the FBI is in the business to do, to intimidate people. That's the wrong business, man, not in America. And so that's being undone. This is a revolution, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's chaotic. And I think you're going to see this revolution going over into national security and foreign policy. It's going to get ugly, really ugly. But I think Trump is trying to streamline things and simplify things and get America out of the business of being the world's policeman, out of the business of sustaining this rules-based international order. You know, he's going to try and replace it with something very simple: America first. Well, at least that's more honest than the rules-based international order, which pretended that it was about the world getting together to live in accordance with rules, but the rules are all written by America. You know, at least Trump is honest enough to say we're not playing the World Trade Organization game anymore. We're not playing the World Health Organization game. We're not playing these games anymore. We're just straight up telling you it's my way or the highway. Is that going to work? I don't know. Probably not. But at least it's more honest than anything we've done in the past. And I'm thrilled to death at this revolution, especially the domestic one. America was fundamentally broken. We were going to hell in a handbasket. And that's what people need to understand. As ugly as it's going to get, that's the only way you save America, because we were dying. We had a parasite on us. This deep state was sucking the life out of us, creating unsustainable, economic, risk, the debt bubble. Can Trump fix it? I don't know. But the only way you can fix it is to have a revolution where you literally reset America. And that's what we're in the process of doing, or at least trying to do. And I think it's wonderful. And the fact that the Democrats are going bananas and the old school Republicans are going bananas tells you it's working, because they're watching everything they thought was there that sustained them and sustained the power structures that they represent get flushed down. It's gone. And Trump's building something new.
When you look at the organizations and the people who receive the funds from USAID, you see Politico, mainstream media, you see George Soros receiving money from this organization. Well, in your opinion, why do they need to pay George Soros? We know he's one of the main donors of many NGOs around the world, and he's feeding them. But why does he need to receive money from USAID? He knows the channels better than them. That's why they're sending money to George Soros. Then he gives it to other, I don't know, NGOs that they're not familiar with USAID.
Got to ask George Soros this. I mean, who am I to sit here and talk for George Soros or USAID? I will say this, that the George Soros Foundations and his Open Society program has been a very effective front for regime change operations around the world. And everybody knew that it was a CIA operation. But, the CIA is very clever. The way the CIA does soft power regime change is not to have a task force, like the Iraq Operations Group, IOG. That was a CIA thing run out of the Director of Operations to overthrow Saddam Hussein. But that was about paramilitary operations, classic CIA political action, covert operations. And the CIA is fully capable of doing that. But when they do soft power and they apply soft power, the whole idea of the creation of the National Endowment for Democracy was to create a front for regime change operations that wasn't tainted by the CIA's presence. And so George Soros has this foundation. I can almost guarantee you, that somewhere locked away in a safe waiting to be discovered is the founding documentation of George Soros's Open Society group. And it's not the one that they're telling. It's the one that's in the CIA vault, where they sat down and said, okay, you're going to be setting this thing up. We're going to be, using it. This is funding channels that we have, et cetera. And they did it. George Soros didn't bring about, the Rose Revolution in Georgia, the Orange Revolution in Ukraine and all that. The CIA did. That's what they do. but they use George Soros, so it couldn't be said this is a CIA operation. But everybody knows it's CIA. The CIA, though, doesn't operate with the operations group. Basically, what happens is the State Department has a meeting, on the 7th floor in conference room, 7-1 Charlie, and everybody shows up there, and you got, George Soros people, and you got the USAID people, and the National Endowment people, and the Republican Institute people, and the Democratic people, and they all sit there, and they start talking. And in the back, in the corner, is a guy that looks like Larry Johnson, and he's got a Hawaiian shirt, and he's got khaki shorts and sandals, and he's just sitting there flipping through something. He might even be stewing on a cigar that's not lit because you can't light them nowadays. And he's just listening, taking notes, and maybe listening to some music and rocking out. And every once in a while, hey, no, we're not going to do that. That's going over here. That's going over there. You guys got that? Okay, yeah, go back. Yeah. Because he's directing the whole show. Because he's the one who knows where the money has to go. He's the one who knows the people that need to be empowered. He's the orchestra. He's the conductor, but he's not going to be up there, conducting. He's just going to be sitting back there monitoring and then when it's all done and he leaves, his name's not on the roster. It's going to have all the people that attended that meeting. His name ain't on the roster. I've been to meetings like that, not USAID meetings, but I've been to the State Department on the 7th floor carrying out those meetings. And there's the guy in the corner whose name never appears on the roster because he's from the Central Frickin' Intelligence Agency in a role that they don't want to acknowledge. That's just the way Washington, D.C. works. The CIA does attend. There's people coming in. I'm from the CIA. It's funny. I've been to those meetings too. And one meeting, hi, my name is Harry Reid. Pleasure to meet you, Harry Reid. And then 6 months later, we're at a meeting, same guy. My name is Lloyd Smith. But weren't you Harry Reid last time I met you? No, don't worry about that. Gotcha. So this stupidity, they're not even that good at what they do anymore. But I'm just trying to say that the CIA has been running this thing. You got to realize what Soros is. It's a CIA front. You got to realize the CIA, when people say, the CIA, they're everywhere. They're everywhere, and they have to be disbanded. I used to go to these meetings back in when I was a weapon when I was doing the INF treaty. In the opening moments of it, I was put in charge of counterintelligence as a frickin' lieutenant. I was just supposed to sit at a desk and answer phones, but then the FBI deputy director, very senior guy, and the colonel, Air Force colonel, who was his deputy, they were gone because we were forming an agency. They had to go back to the FBI and the Air Force and do things. So I'm just sitting there at the desk and ring, ring, ring. Hello? Yeah, this is Special Agent Smith with the National Security Agency. And we've got a meeting right now to talk about how we're going to do X, Y, and Z and all that. And we need the on-site inspector representative. That would be me. So I go to the meeting, and I go to these meetings, and but when I'm there, there's just people around the table, and they start handing me business cards. Well, good talking to you, Scott. We'll be in touch. And I look at the business card, and a lot of them were INSCOM or NSA or DIA or FBI. You go, okay, I know this. J. Smith Export Import. Well, who the hell is J? Why is an export-import company here? What's going on? And the more meeting, then this guy would just show up at everything. I realized he's not in the export-import business. He's doing something completely different. And that's just a cover. And I have a stack of business cards like this. Probably the FBI, I don't have to check. Maybe the FBI took them when they raided my house. Maybe that's why they raided my house. But the point is, there's a whole way America runs that nobody's aware of. The whole way the intelligence community, and they don't do anything good. That's the other thing I want to put up there. The big thing. This is a true story. The Soviets came to Magda, Utah, and they start buying VHS players. That's big back in the late 1980s. VHS, and they're like, we're going to get this and bring it home. And so they're all going out and buying, and of course they got a list. The colonel needs one, this, so they're buying a whole bunch of them. And suddenly there's an emergency meeting that I have to attend, and they're like, all right, why are the Soviets buying VHS? You know, if they stack them up, they wire them all together, they can get each one to collect against a very specific frequency, and they could try to intercept this, because in Salt Lake City, we have a confluence of communication systems. Boom, boom, boom. And there he is, John Smith from J&S Export-Import Company, leading the charge. And I'm like, why is an export-import guy sitting here talking about the Soviets stacking VHS decks in their basement, intercepting American microwave communications? And I said, because one of the I was there as counterintelligence, but I was also there because we had Americans in Vodkinsk. And if you do anything against the Soviets in Utah, there's repercussions because it's called reciprocity. So I have a vested interest in saying, don't screw with them too much, because what goes around comes around for people like me over there, who we're in the middle of nowhere, and we have, you know, very little latitude to have fun over there on our off time. And if you screw with them, they're going to screw with us. But then the other thing I was like, and I asked the question, what if they're just buying VHS decks? What do you mean? What if they just want to bring a VHS player home? Is it against the law? No. Then why are we making a big deal out of this? So what we ended up doing, the common sense solution was, when you buy a VHS deck, you can either get it so that it's part of your, that you're using it in your housing, or it just goes into storage until you fly back to the Soviet Union, and then we bring it all out and give it to you. And that was the solution. But in the meantime, the export-import company was out there running. They're everywhere, Nima. They're everywhere. The secret underworld of American intelligence. The FBI runs them. Every single, the DEA, they all have these covert, non-official cover things happening in America that are unaccountable to anybody. And they do crazy shit. And that's not the way America's supposed to work. That's why I love what Pam Bondi just did. Everybody's so mad at her right now, because, you know, Adam Schiff and everybody, you know, because she shut down the malign influence joint task force, you know, that was saying that, you know, Russia's out to, that's the task force that came after me, because apparently I was working with the Russians to undermine the presidential election last year. So they came after me. They're the ones who came after me. And she shut it down. And they're like, well, see, the Russians won. No, America won. Because that was a BS investigation to begin with, run by a bunch of people who don't know anything about Russia, whose sole purpose is just to empower themselves. When they create these task forces, they very rarely solve the problem that they're meant to solve. What they do is create additional bureaucracies that then get staffed and funded with untold amounts of money that enrich people without ever solving the problem. Every time there's one of these task forces, and these are task forces that should be doing good things. But ask yourself why we don't win the war against drugs. Ask yourself why we don't stop child pornography. Ask yourself why we haven't made a dent in any of these things. It's because none of the programs set up are designed to actually solve the problem. They're designed as funding mechanisms to enrich people, and the USAID models repeat themselves. This is the point I'm trying to make. Models behavior. The government behavior with USAID is the same government mentality behavior that exists with everything the government does. Shut it down. Start over. And start over being honest, and keep it simple, and stay mission focused. What is your job? Your job is to do X. Do your job. That's it. You don't need a lot of people to make that thing happen. You don't have to create a bureaucracy. You don't have to create this, that, and the other thing. Get rid of it all and start over. And I hope that's what Donald Trump's doing, because if not, this country's screwed. It's unsustainable, and it's un-American. Americans have to and eventually, with the extent of how the government has deceived the American people becomes known, how Congress has deceived us. The blowback to Congress should be, devastating. Almost everybody who's in Congress should be voted out, and it's time to get a new generation of people in who don't have to operate off of this corruption, this corrupt model. Because once you become in Congress, you get on committees. Ask yourself what they do in those committees. What's the purpose of the committee? It ain't solving problems. It's having meetings to create funding opportunities, to get budget opportunities. Why does our budget keep growing? And why don't we know where the money goes? why is it acceptable that we can have $268 billion just, we don't know what happened to it? Overpayments. I remember when I was in the military, they overpaid me once. I did a TDY, and they overpaid me by like $58. Oh, for God's sake. I mean, they came to me, immediate repayment right now. Took it out of my pay, acted like I was the criminal. I didn't do it. It was your mistake, not my mistake. $268 billion in overpayments. And they're not even trying to get it back because it's not supposed to be gotten back, Nima. It's a deliberate corruption to enrich people, to empower people. And every single one of these politicians is involved in it. They are so filthy, dirty, corrupt. It's not even. That's why Donald Trump's a breath of fresh air. I know he grabs women by the pee, and I know he does this, and I know he's bad and all that stuff. But you know what he's not? A frickin' senator, a frickin' representative, a frickin' governor, or a frickin' state official. He's never been corrupted by that system. He's been corrupted by a different system. But at least he's honest about it. I mean, you got to love the honesty of a man that sits there and says, I know how to play the tax game because I that's why I gave you money, Hillary. I gave you money so that you change the tax law so that I can do it. I know how this game works. He's been on the other end. So, there we are. I mean, I am so thrilled that they're starting to target this because I've been calling it out. I've been aware of this corruption from day one. Early on, I wasn't aware of the scope and scale, just things that didn't make sense. Like, why am I meeting with an export-import guy when I'm talking about national counterintelligence? I don't know. I thought I was just a stupid little lieutenant going, I thought the world was, very structured because the Marine Corps is very structured, but apparently it wasn't. I started asking questions. Then I start looking at, larger issues, in the arms control business, counterintelligence business. Then I got involved in Iraq. It was just a mind-blowing thing, the corruption there. And then once you come out, you've seen all these patterns and you're able to take these templates and overlay them. And so it's like, you see that movie, it's when Ryan Reynolds, he's an animated guy for that guy or something like, but when he puts on the glasses, like he's looking into World War I, it's like, oh no, I got the glasses, and I'm sitting there going, oh no, and that's the thing. That's a lot of reason why I'm so angry is because I can see what the hell's going on, and I'm trying to explain it to people, and it's hard to explain because it's just so outrageous. When I was trying to explain to my parents about the corruption of the weapons of mass destruction scam that was being run, my dad was like, well, Rush Limbaugh believes that, this, that, and I'm like, no. Well, then why doesn't the Washington Post agree with you? Because they're all in on it. Everybody's in on it. That's the whole thing. It's one giant scam, one giant grift. And I happen to be the guy that was in a position to put on the glasses and go, oh my God. But it's hard to explain that to people. Thank God for what Elon Musk is doing with USAID, because now everybody's getting the glasses. And hopefully they're all doing the same thing, going, oh my God. Wait till you get the glasses for the Department of Education. Wait till you get the glasses for the Department of Commerce and all these other corrupt entities. And you realize, wait till America finds out the truth about the national highway system and how it's funded and how we handle those contracts and who gets the contracts and how much the contracts cost to put highways. It's all a scam. It's all a scam.
Scott, when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine, we know that it seems that Keith Kellogg is going to present his proposal, or the Donald Trump administration's proposal for the conflict in Ukraine. Do we know if he has changed the terms in the proposal that everybody was talking about?
I don't know. I don't know that. Do you know that? I don't think anybody knows that. What I know the following. Vladimir Putin doesn't give a damn about anything Keith Kellogg's going to say because none of it matters. The Russians have made it clear. This war ends the way Russia wants it to end. That's it. Nothing else matters. And anybody tries to do, the things that we're seeing, we see, no NATO. Well, gee, thanks. Russia already said that. So who is the United States to give Russia that? Russia went to war because of that. The reason why there's a war is because NATO wanted to get into Ukraine and Russia went, no. So for the United States to go, okay, no NATO, Russia, no, we're already there. There won't be a NATO. It's not your decision to make. We made that decision already, non-negotiable. The territories, Crimea and Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Lugansk, it's Russia. Russia already made that decision. The war won't end until all of those territories belong to that, and the Ukrainians are out of Kursk. Okay? It's non-negotiable. You're not going to freeze the thing. A ceasefire. There won't be a ceasefire. The only time the shooting stops is when a peace treaty is signed. There won't be a ceasefire before that, because otherwise Russia has yielded all the advantages it's obtained by carrying out this very expensive war of attrition. They now have total control over the scope and scale and the pace and the direction of the battlefield. And it's all moving in Russia's direction. Why would Russia ever reverse that? And there won't be a single foreign soldier on Ukrainian soil unless they speak Russian and they wear the Russian uniform. There's not going to be British peacekeepers, French peacekeepers. There won't be any peacekeepers. Peacekeeping, by the way, only happens when both sides agree to this. So the idea of unilaterally imposing a peacekeeping solution on Russians that don't want it just means you'll have dead peacekeepers, because they won't be peacekeepers. They'll be war fighters fighting on behalf of Ukraine. This is the reality. Russia has prepared a plan, an economic plan for sustainment of their defense industry and the economic investments into this war that goes through the end of 2027 into 2028. Budanov, the head of Ukrainian intelligence, says that Ukraine ceases to exist this summer. You tell me which model is the more sustainable model. Keith Kellogg, it doesn't matter what he thinks or what he says or does. It's irrelevant. It's a game being played for domestic consumption. So the Russians aren't listening. They don't care. And I wish Keith Kellogg would start listening to the Russians, because that's the reality. The United States has no leverage over Russia. Trump and Kellogg talk about bringing the oil down to $45 a barrel. Russia can laugh that off. You know who can't? The United States. Go to West Texas. Ask the wildcatters who've been pouring all their life savings and everything, borrowing money from the bank to drill the new oil. Drill, baby, drill. Those new wells, break-even point, $66. Right now they're making money because it's $78. Drop it down to 45 and watch all of those those wells go out of business, and watch all the wildcat companies go bankrupt, and watch the American economy collapse, and watch oil production in the United States drop by 30% in 2 years. That's the reality. So Trump needs to, they're just in fantasy land. But I think one of the things that Trump does is he puts forward, remember, I think we have to treat the Kellogg peace plan with the same skepticism that we treated Trump's Gaza peace plan. Absurd, unrealistic, is never going to happen. But it's the opening gambit. Remember, Trump is putting something out for not just the Russians, but the Ukrainians and NATO. He has to play those too. And I'm pretty sure at the end, the Russians are going to get what they want, because that's the only way this war ends. If Trump wants the war to end this year, then he has to fast track getting Russia to where it wants to be. If Trump causes a problem, Russia will get there on Russia's timetable. It'll cost the Ukrainians a lot more lives. It'll cost us, more money, but it isn't going to alter the outcome. And all it does is further entrench Russia against the United States. I think Donald Trump understands that, his ultimate goal is to have stability in the European theater of operations. You're not going to get stability by forcing Russia to continue this war to crush NATO, crush Europe, and embarrass the United States. The best way to avoid embarrassment is don't put yourself in embarrassing situations. And right now, trying to stand up to Russia on Ukraine is an embarrassment.
Do you think that Donald Trump, two options on his part, talking with Putin immediately or letting this conflict going on as long as Zelensky is willing to continue the conflict? And this is not the problem for Donald Trump. If Ukrainians, or maybe the administration in Ukraine, because we don't know what do Ukrainians feel about this situation in Ukraine, but at least the Zelensky administration wants to continue the conflict. And how is that going to, if you look at Donald Trump and his behavior, does he really want them, I'm talking about Zelensky and the government in Ukraine, to understand the situation they're in, and they asked Donald Trump to put an end to the conflict?
Again, why are you pretending Donald Trump can put an end to the conflict? Why is anybody pretending this? It's a pretense. Zelensky can ask Trump all he wants. Zelensky can demand of Trump. Zelensky can beg to Trump. Russia doesn't care. Donald Trump literally doesn't have a say in any of this. Trump believes he does. He's trying to make himself to be the big player. The biggest player in this is Vladimir Putin. That's the big dog. Trump is a big dog trying to get into the big dog's neighborhood. The big dog's like, I don't want to fight with you, but but you got to get rid of the barking chihuahuas, and this is my neighborhood. But Trump can't come in and say, now you go back to your kennel and you go back to your kennel and it all belongs to me. Who the hell is Donald Trump to come walking in and say, we get all the rare earth metals in Ukraine? Well, the Russians are like, well, you're going to have to kick us off that land because we own it, pal. We're going to own it all, and you're going to get none of it. None of it. This is the stupidity of the Trump approach. It's so stupid that you have to take a step back and go, he knows it's stupid. Donald Trump's not an idiot. This is, again, I think, part of the opening audacious gambit. But the difference is, with the Middle East, he has multiple opportunities. I think Trump understands that he's got one shot with Putin, and he better make it a good one. And so this is why you haven't seen the phone call yet. This is why they haven't set up a meeting yet. And this is why instead of a 24-hour timetable, you're talking 80 to 100 days. A lot can happen in 80 to 100 days, including the elimination of Zelensky as a political issue, which I think is the direction many people are heading, and the collapse of Ukraine's ability to sustain itself economically, politically, and militarily, which puts a whole new spin on the reality of negotiations. Right now, Ukraine is laboring under the false promise of American support and America will back them up. But when it becomes apparent that it's all over, as Budanov said, Ukraine ceases to exist. To give you an example of where the Russians are on this one, the head of the Russian intelligence service, an old friend of Vladimir Putin's, is holding meetings and within Russia, and is talking about holding meetings with regional neighbors to carve up Ukraine in a post-conflict reality. I think part of denazification is to turn Western Ukraine, where the Ukrainian nationalists are, over to Poland, and let the Poles solve the problem of the Banderists. And the Poles have no love lost with the Banderists, so here you have common cause. I think the Hungarians are very interested in the Hungarian population of Carpathia. I think the Slovakians are interested in the Ruthenians, and I think the Romanians have an interest in that too. So I think you have all these neighbors of Ukraine that are more than happy, I think, at the end to carve Ukraine up. And this is what Trump has to understand. That's the reality. That's the outcome. Trump's not going to stop that because this war ends when Russia wants it to end. And one of the ways it's going to end is with a total political collapse of the Ukrainian government. And then Russia steps in with its own version of it. They already have the guy they want to be the interim president. They already have interim parliamentarians. This government that's there right now isn't going to exist. It's going to be eliminated. That's part of denazification. The Ukrainian military is going to be eliminated. That's demilitarization. It's not just no NATO. It's the fundamental change. And I think you're also going to look at Russia. Everybody's like, well, Russia's going to have to take Odessa and Kharkov. No, they don't. There's no articulation of that from Vladimir Putin, and Russia's not making any of the military steps would be necessary to seize Odessa and Kharkov. What Russia is going to do is create the political conditions under which Russia will be able to assert its authority in a post-conflict manner in these areas by overseeing the governance of those regions, and then create through economic investment, etc., the conditions that are favorable for a referendum 3 to 5 years down the road, where those populations vote to join Russia and secede from Ukraine. That's how Russia gets Odessa. That's how Russia gets Kharkov, and maybe how they get Dnipropetrovsk and Mykolaiv as well. This is where Donald Trump could actually play a role and go into Russia and say, hey, we'll give you everything you want, but we need assurances that the post-conflict, that the territories that are there are going to be part of a greater Ukraine. We'll let you have a say on how a greater Ukraine looks, but you need to commit to a treaty that has a clause that says no referendums. That we're not going, that there won't be a pathway to referendum, a pathway to independence. That way, post-war Ukraine has Odessa, has access to the Black Sea, has economic viability. They have Dnipropetrovsk, they have, Kharkov, they have the minerals that are there. There's, a potential for a post-war economy that's beyond agronomy. That's what Trump could be doing if he was smart. But instead, he's, and maybe that's the direction he's going. But to get there, I think it's the same thing with anything. You've got to get everybody to recognize that the path that people were headed on, because the concept of a ceasefire and foreign peacekeepers, that predates Donald Trump. That's a concept that was being bandied around under Biden. Trump can't just ignore all that and jump over here, because people will say, oh no, you've caved into Putin, you've caved into Russia. So he goes in with this, and it becomes totally impractical, but it begins a process of negotiation where the Russian reality is gradually able to be absorbed. And in the end, you get some sort of compromise. And I do think the one area that the Russians would be willing to compromise on is a guarantee, because I talked to the former prime minister of Ukraine who has fled to Russia as part of the Ukrainian government in exile. And he said, a Ukraine without Odessa, a Ukraine without Kharkov is not a Ukraine. It's not economically viable. And so it's in the interest of Ukraine to have both those territories stay in Ukraine, and it's in the interest of Russia to have them stay in there, because long-term, saying no to NATO is one thing. And the other thing Trump is saying, guaranteed EU membership. No, that's not going to happen. Ukraine is going to become part of the union. That right now there's, you have Belarus and Russia have an economic political union. Ukraine is going to become a part of that, a three-way union. That's the future of Ukraine. A three-way union that ties it to Russia, because Russia's never again going to allow Ukraine to be used by the West as a tool to undermine Russia. That will never again happen. It's not just about kicking NATO out. It's about ensuring Ukraine stays in the Russian orbit forever in perpetuity. That's it. And that's a reality that the United States has to accept and NATO has to accept. And if they don't want to, then this war will go on until Russia dictates that outcome. But Ukraine will not be an independent state leaning towards the West ever again. Russia can't afford that. They're not going to fight this war 30 years from now, which would be what happens if you allow Ukraine to be polluted by the West, to become a member of the European Union. First of all, the European Union is not going to be here in 30 years anyway, so it doesn't matter. But no, Russia is going to insist that Ukraine is part of an economic and political union. And that way, Odessa and Kharkov, the economic potential benefits not just Ukraine, but also the union as a whole. And that's how Russia controls those areas. And that's how the people who live there, who are speaking Russian and ethnic Russians, feel safe and secure in there, because that'll be built into the Constitution. And because it's a union, there's open borders. They can travel freely into Militarytactics. They can travel freely into Russia. And that's the direction we're heading. They're going to carve out, they're going to jettison Western Ukraine, though. I don't think the Russians want anything to do with Lvov and that, because it's full of poisonous people. And that's Poland's problem. Poland's going to have to deal with those people.